make sure that we have good communication.
Well, of course
Right?
I do.
Of course, okay.
I'm 33 years. Of course.
That's right. Okay,
Yeah.
so Tim, this is a banana.
That's a banana.
Okay, what is that?
That's a banana.
Okay, good.
Got it. All right. Hello? Yep. Yeah, I'd like to order a pepperoni pizza. You want anything? I gotta go. Bye.
Tim, this is so embarrassing. We were just talking about communication.
Well, that was rude of you. I was trying to order something and you just like cut them off.
It's not a phone. It's a banana.
Oh, it's a banana.
It's a banana.
It's a banana.
Okay. Now this
Banana.
is a bandana.
That's a bandana.
Okay. So this is a
Banana.
this is a
Bandana.
Okay,
It's
good.
a banana.
That's
It's a
right.
bandana.
That's
It's a
right.
banana and a bandana. Banana.
Okay.
Banana.
All right, I got it.
Okay.
Okay. All right. Tim, I want you to hold the bandana in your right hand.
Hold the bandana in my right hand.
That's right.
Okay.
Now I want you to fold the four corners of the bandana together.
Fold the four corners together.
Yes.
Okay.
You got that?
Almost. Just a second. Got it.
Okay. Now fold the bandana in half.
Fold it in half.
Yes. Okay.
Got it.
Fold it in half one more time.
Fold it in half again.
Yes.
All right.
Got that?
Got it.
Okay, now place the bandana in your hand so that none of it is showing.
Are you sure?
I'm sure. Got it?
Not quite. Just a second.
Okay.
Whoa.
Okay.
It's getting there.
Then on the count of three, the bandana will disappear before your very eyes.
I sure hope so.
All right, here we go. 1, 2, 3. What did you do? Oh, Tim. That's just a fun, silly way that we like to share that. But have you ever done that? You thought you communicated so clearly, you used all the right tools, and yet still the other person didn't get what you were saying. Has that ever happened to anyone? Yeah. Or how about this one? Have you ever been in a difficult conversation and then wondered why you responded the way you did? Afterwards you go, I know better. Why did I act that way? Anyone have those kind of times? Or if you want to admit those, yeah. So today we are going to hopefully give you some tools that'll help with those type of scenarios. That will help you be able to communicate in a way that the other person gets it and receives it. We're going to hopefully give you some tools that will help you not have to have those moments that said, why did I react that way? I know better. And hopefully some other tools to strengthen the communication that you have in your relationship. How many of you remember a Jack-in-the-Box toy? Anyone remember those? So when you wind it up and you wind it up and you wind it up and then finally Jack pops up, right? And there's that startle or that fear. That is kind of what we're talking about with a passive person. The mechanism inside a Jack-in-the-Box is a spring. And every time you wind it, and then it gets more pressure on that spring. And then when the spring can't take any more pressure, Jack pops up. That's kind of what an aggressive communicator is. It's not that last thing that made them explode. It's everything that they shoved and they shoved and they shoved until Jack pops up. And you're going, where in the world did that come from? It's because of the role of the listener is to be an active listener. And so what does that mean? First of all, it means that you're listening to understand, not to respond. So often what we're doing is we're listening to respond. How do we know the difference? Well, if you're thinking in your head what you're going to say when the other person is done, you are listening to respond.
Even before they're done?
Yeah, yes. No, while they're speaking, if you're going, okay, when they're done, if you interrupt, I'm going to say this. you are not listening to understand. And you're going to miss some things. So here is the remedy for that. The listener's job when they become the speaker is to summarize what they heard the speaker say. If that is what you're going to do, then you cannot formulate what you're going to say while they're speaking because you don't know, because you're going to summarize what they said.
And so the first one we're going to talk about here is internal processors. Some people are internal processors. And what that means is they receive the information, hearing it, reading it, whatever, and then they have to be quiet and they process internally. They think about, and normally they don't speak until they've drawn a conclusion. They've come to a conclusion about the information they have. Any internal processors here? You'd say, yeah, that's what I am. I just kind of get that information and think about it and go quiet. Nobody wants to admit it. Okay, that's good. You're internally processing. That moment. All right. But that's what internal processors do. Now, next to that is the external processors. With external processors, they literally have to either speak or write out their thoughts in order to process the information. How many of you know someone that whatever's going on in their head is coming out of their mouth? Anybody know someone like that? Maybe it's you. But that's what an external processor is. And literally, they can't process that information without getting it out in some form, in some way. That is just how they've been designed to process the information. All right? Once again, nothing better, nothing worse, okay? Now, the next one we have is waffle brains. Waffle brains. 99.99999% of the time, this is a man. Okay? Waffle brain. How many are familiar with waffles here? Anybody familiar with waffles? All right, good. All right, people are waking up. They got to get some hands going. Good. All right, so in waffle brains, you got the little squares, little individual sections, right? Think of a man's brain kind of that way. We have individual sections of how we think. We compartmentalize what we work on. We'll have a work square, we'll have a family square, we'll have a TV square, we'll have a recreation square, and the thing is, we can only be in one square at a time. Okay? And in order to think about something else, we literally have to unplug out of that square and plug into a new square before we are ready to think or process in that new square. Now, one thing interesting about this is they found that men actually have a nothing square. All right? That we have a nothing square. In other words, so if you come up and say, hey, what are you thinking about? We go, nothing. Most likely it's true. So that's the waffle brains of men. Now, next to that is the spaghetti brain. Like I said, 99.99999% of the time, this is women. All right? And if you think about a plate of spaghetti, it's got all these noodles, all intermingled, multiple touch points, all this stuff going on, right? And that's really how a woman's brain works. They just constantly have things going on, and they touch point with other things, and they're all interconnected. How many of you ever experienced a time where you're talking, you start a conversation, and you're on this topic, and about 10 minutes later, you're like 20 topics over, and you're going, how in the world did we get here? Right? Now, the interesting thing is, I've asked Pam on several occasions when we got there, I said, how did we get from here to here? You know what? She could tell me every touch point along the way. All right? And I was actually amazed by it, going, whoa, it wasn't just random. You actually have all this stuff going on and all these touch points. And so it's really amazing. Once again, like I said, none of these are better or worse. They're just different. And another thing we can use is use emotional word pictures. Anybody heard that phrase, emotional word pictures? We're all familiar with it, especially in the church. Jesus used them all the time. We call them parables. Right? An emotional word picture. Farmer went out in the field. He scattered seed. Emotional word picture. The people understood that. He's standing by the sea at a mill place, and he says, "Hey, if anyone causes one of these children to stumble or to fall," he says, "it'd be better for them if they had a millstone tied around their neck and they were thrown into the sea." That's an emotional word picture, isn't it? You get the picture very quickly. You understand what's being said. we can use these emotional word pictures as well. And there's 5 steps to creating these emotional word pictures. The first step, establish a clear purpose. Know what you're trying to say. Know what message you're trying to get across. Second, carefully consider their experiences and interests. Consider their interests, their passions, their experiences. What are they interested in? Because you want to connect to them. All right, it's important. Don't sit there and say, well, this is what I'm passionate about, if they're not passionate about it, because that won't connect. So if they're interested in sports, hey, use sports. If they're interested in fishing or hunting, use hunting, fishing, sewing in it. All right. The third thing is rehearse your story. Don't just think that, well, I'll get there and it'll just come to me of what I should say. Because I'll tell you, if you come in there going, well, that's not really, the more choppy it is, the less likely it is to connect. Okay. Fourth, pick a convenient time without distractions. All right, you don't want to try and get this if they're watching TV or doing something else. Don't try to share this with them. You got kids running around your feet. Don't sit there and try to do this, because you want them to be able to hear, to be able to focus on what you're saying, and to be able to understand what you're saying. And then number 5 is try and try again. In other words, if you do one and it doesn't work, don't quit. Keep trying. Try different ways to try and get that message across. If it's important to you, it's important to get the message across. A wife said to her, she was in a situation where she felt like every time there was time to discipline the kids, every time there's a struggle with the kids, that she would go to her husband and say, hey, they're doing this, and it's really frustrating, whatever. And his response would just be, oh, it's not a big deal. She never felt support, that he supported her, especially with the children. Or she said, hey, you need to go and do this. He'd be like, whatever, And so, and every time she tried to talk to him about it, he'd be like, he just wasn't getting it. And so she began to think about her husband and what was he really into? What was he really passionate about? She thought about he was really passionate about football. In fact, he played all through growing up. As I saw that look on your face. Not about your passion, it's about his, okay? And so, and he's really passionate about football. In fact, he played football all through middle school and high school, and even through college. And not only played, but he was a quarterback for the team. He was just really passionate. Everything was about football, and he just loved it. And so she started thinking about it. Started going, okay, how can I get this to relate? And so as she thought about it, she came up with this story. And she came to him, and she was talking to him, and they sat down together. And she said, hey, I want to tell you about this. She goes, there's this football team, and on the football team there's a quarterback, and the quarterback was just really excited. They'd been practicing. They got to the first game, and as they were in their first game, they came out of the huddle, and the first play was going to be a pass, and he was really excited because they could be really successful at this. And as he ready, he said, he got the ball, and his center just stood up and let the defender run by him and just took out the quarterback. And he's like, whoa, what's going on here? But he got up and got set up. They went back to the huddle, and they got set up, and there's another pass play. And he's going, okay, good. We got this. And as he hiked the ball, and he went back to pass the ball, and the center just let the defender back by him again. And the guy just took out the quarterback. Well, about this time, she noticed he's starting to get a little tense. And she goes, and so they got back in the huddle, and when they got back in the huddle, the center looked at the quarterback and said, hey, why aren't you doing your job? Why aren't you getting that pass off? And the quarterback was just so mad and so frustrated. And she saw that he was just, and she goes, I got him. And as he's there, she goes, guess what? She says, that's how I feel. I feel like that quarterback whenever I try to get you to help me out with the kids. I feel like that quarterback. I come and I go, hey, I need some help with the kids. They're not listening. They're not doing this. I need you to help discipline. And you go, oh, it's not a big deal. I feel like that quarterback when the defender hits him. Or when I say, hey, I need you to go and do this with the kids, or do that, and you say, I don't want to, or whatever. I feel like that quarterback being hit by that defender. She says, and then you turn and say, hey, why aren't you doing this, or why aren't you doing that? And I feel like that center talking to that quarterback, saying, why aren't you getting your job done? He got it. He understood. And so you can see that, and you can do that, and then after that, once you've got that established, once that's done, then you can shorten it. We talked earlier about grass is green, sky is blue. Later on, as they went on, she could just say, hey, I'm feeling like that quarterback again, and he would understand. Didn't have to go through the whole story again. And so you can think about it. You can do this.
We switch these up a little bit. So if the conversation is spiraling and you're not getting anywhere, you want to take a time out. If you're feeling dysregulated, you want to take a time out. If, as Timothy pointed out, if you just need time to process, you might just say, hey, this is a lot of information. I need a time out so I can process this. Now, what happens is one person in the conversation, usually if we take a time out, we'll never get back to the conversation. They will avoid it. So you just try to power through and make sure that you get to that. The problem with that is if you're in a dysregulated state, or if you don't take that time out because things are not productive, it's only going to get worse. You have to do that. And here's why. In your brain, you have, of course, lots of parts, but there's three main parts. You have what is called your lower level brain. That's your brainstem and your diencephalon. In that region of the brain, everything is automatic. If you've heard the phrase fight, flight, freeze response, that's where that is housed. That's the part of the brain that keeps your heart beating, your lungs breathing. There's no thinking, there's no emotion in that part of the brain. Scientists also call that the reptilian brain because reptiles, that's the only part of the brain that reptiles have. So when we function out of that region of our brain, we are functioning like a lizard. I don't want to come to my conversations like a lizard. Oh. So then we have the second part of our brain is the limbic system. That's called our midbrain. That is where all the emotions are housed. It's also where our trauma is housed as well. In the middle of the limbic system is the amygdala. Now, if you think about the amygdala, I want you to think about it as a fire alarm. So it's the fear sensor of the brain. Right now, we have plans, we have the morning schedule, but if that fire alarm in this building went off, everything we planned stops. We have to figure out where the danger is. We have to get ourselves safe. We have to take those protocols. We understand that. That is exactly what happens in your brain when your amygdala goes off. The fire alarm in my brain is going off and I don't feel safe. So when that happens, then the highest level brain, the prefrontal cortex, the part of the brain that God gave to only humans, goes offline. Or if you've heard the phrase, flipped our lid. You cannot access the prefrontal cortex when your amygdala is going off, because then you go into the fight, flight, freeze response. So I love the terminology of offline. If you have a favorite website and you know how to navigate that website perfectly, if you're offline, it doesn't matter. You cannot access that website. Same thing. So what I talked earlier about, when you come into a conversation and you go, why did I act that way? I know better. It's because your prefrontal cortex was offline. Everything, all your skills, all the things that you know are in that region of the brain. When it goes offline, it's kind of like those skills are still there, but they're behind this iron bar and you can't reach them. So that is why you do not want to try to power through when you're dysregulated. You have to get that prefrontal cortex back online. If you try to power through, most likely you'll have a lot of repair that you have to do. You'll have a lot of hurt feelings, and the conversation will be worse than it was in the beginning. Now, a timeout doesn't work if all you're doing is in that timeout going, I am so mad at them, they are just so mean, and you just keep thinking the same thought. It's not good. So this is how you call for a healthy timeout. It sounds something like this. Hey, I don't like what's going on in my body. I don't want to do anything that's going to hurt the relationship. So you see, you're taking ownership that you need it. You don't say, you're out of control, you need it. Back to those life statements. I need it. And is to agree when you'll resume the conversation. This is going to help that person that says, well, that we won't come back to it if we take a timeout. So it might be like this. Hey, I need a timeout. I'll come back to it in 5 minutes. I'll come back to it in 30 minutes. We can come back after dinner. All right, so now the question is, okay, if we're in that timeout, how do we make sure that it's a productive timeout? How do we get ourselves regulated? So the first thing you're going to do is you're going to regulate your body. When I say regulate, what I mean is you're trying to get the fire alarm to stop sounding, and you're trying to get your prefrontal cortex back online. Well, one thing that happens when we're stressed, anxious, mad, whatever, is our breathing gets quick and short, right? And oxygen, everything goes in the brain in that order, including oxygen. So the prefrontal cortex is one of the reasons it goes offline too, is it doesn't get enough oxygen. So we want to make sure we get enough oxygen. We hear this phrase all the time, we'll take some deep breaths. And people will tell me, Pam, when I take deep breaths, it doesn't solve my problem. I know. What it does is it allows you access to the part of the brain that can solve the problem. I think that differentiation is really important, because when we think, well, it's still just as bad. I know, but now your thinking brain is back online. One thing that is really cool is that science has said that when the thinking brain goes offline, it takes 3 deep breaths to get enough oxygen to go back online. We know that 3 is a number that is used a lot in the Bible. One of my favorite number 3s is the Trinity. So what I've come up with is what I call Trinity breathing. I love this because it works with the biology of your body as well as it aligns your heart and mind with Christ. So what you're going to do when you're trying to regulate your body is you're going to take that first deep breath in, and you're going to think about God the Father. And you're going to think about what attribute of God the Father do you need in that moment. Is it protector? Is it provider? Whatever it is that you need. And you're going to breathe that in, thinking of that. So it's going to be, and then as you hold that breath, you're going to just sit in that attribute. And then when you breathe out, you're going to picture everything inside you that is keeping him from being God the Father, leaving your body. Literally picture that stress, that anger, that unforgiveness leaving your body. Then the second breath, Jesus. Who is Jesus to you in that moment? Is he friend? Is he redeemer? Is he whatever you need in that moment? And then that third breath, Holy Spirit. Who is the Holy Spirit? Is he guide? Is he counselor? What is he? That you're going to breathe that in, and then every breath out, you're picturing that stress, that anxiety, whatever that is, to leaving your body. What that's going to do is it's going to get enough oxygen to your prefrontal cortex, and it's going to get your mind and heart centered back with who God is. So I love Trinity breathing. That's a great way to regulate your body. Another one is called the Haven technique, and I'm going to have to set my mic down for a sec. So a Haven technique is you're going to put your arms like you're hugging yourself kind of, and you rub down to your elbows. You lift your hands, and it's only a downward motion. So it looks like this. There's another Haven spot that goes right here and goes down your face. So what that is doing is there are certain nerves in that body, in those parts of your body, that when you rub in that downward motion, your nervous system will send signals to your brain that says, I'm good, I'm okay, I don't need any more stress hormones.